let's hop into these All-Star reserves. Let's go ahead and start with the East. My reserves, and full disclosure, they match the score.com. I didn't see any disparity, and my decision was like, compared to seasons past, we didn't have to deal with COVID, so that was kind of a factor in this decision for now, and it could change before a week before the All Star break. But what I have now is Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, excuse me. Forgive me if I butchered this guy's first name. Domantas Sabonis. How you pronounce Sabonis' first name?
Is it DeMontis?
That sounds right to me. Demontis.
I might be wrong too.
That
I
sounds
always
better
go
than my
to his dad, Arvydas Sabonis.
Right? Yeah, me too. Chris Middleton, Trae Young, and Ben Simmons. And I say that's pending, and I might be willing to put Jimmy Butler on that list and take somebody off.
Ben Simmons, I love it.
I do appreciate what he's done for the 76ers. I mean, you can't deny what they've done in terms of their record and how they've been. I mean, they're on top of the conference right now.
Yeah,
I like his stats. I have beats with him being this LeBron James second coming. I'll always say that. However, I think he's an all-star for now. However, if the Heat continue to move up the rankings here, right now they're a ninth. That's better than they were last week. If they're in the middle of the pack by the time the All-Star break happens, I am perfectly willing to take Ben Simmons off this list fairly easily. Or pretty much anybody else. I would say probably Kyrie stays, Brown, Tatum. I'm biased. I like Trae Young. He probably stays. I'm looking at Sabonis, Middleton, and Simmons. Sabonis probably stays safe, but really Middleton and Ben Simmons I'm looking at fairly closely. If Butler improves the Heat, he is a huge factor. I would say he is, in terms of how he affects the team, he is very much like a Draymond Green. Like, his stats don't have to be spectacular for him to have a massive effect on the game. And if he's active in the lineup, they're gonna be a huge factor. I mean,
great analogy.
They had a tough game against the Utah Jazz. They've been on a tear, but they gave the Jazz plenty to handle. So that's something that I'm watching closely. The West, real quickly, nothing really sensational. I have Donovan Mitchell, Zion, Damian Lillard, Rudy Gobert, Paul George, and Devin Booker. And looking at the omissions, I can't put anybody on there. Chris Paul is probably the closest person I would maybe think about putting on this list. I don't know who I would take off. Other than that, Karl Anthony Towns has not played enough games. John Morant, I would see him getting some love, and Brandon Ingram. I think those are the two guys that are probably going to get the most, I think, pushback for not being on this list. But at the same time, I mean, just the Jazz, unbelievable season. I mean, Booker is always awesome, always underrated. So those are my picks. How about you, Matt? Anything that's varies, or what you got going on?
Yeah, so my starters were KD, Harden, Giannis, Jaylen Brown, and Joel Embiid.
Okay.
So I also put Kyrie on there. I also put Trae Young. I put in Julius Randle.
Okay.
I put in Bradley Beal. Sorry, Russell Westbrook, you're not getting in just because the Wizards are terrible. You got one pick. I also had Sabonis in there just because you got to give the Pacers a nod. And his numbers are legit too, 20, 12, and 5. And then I did have Ben Simmons in there as well. Not so much for the numbers alone, which are okay, 12, 8, and 7. So, I mean, almost averaging a triple-double. But really, he's going to be second, in my opinion, behind Rudy Gobert for Defensive Player of the Year. The West, I thought, was too stacked to put Rudy Gobert in there for myself. And maybe he does make it as a coach's pick, or maybe I think he was fairly low on the fan voting as well. Probably some of that just has to do with being on the Utah Jazz. But West, just to review, my starters were Curry, Dame Lillard, even though I think you're right, and I think Luka's going to be the starter there, especially with them improving. I still have Dame Lillard. And then LeBron, Kawhi, and Jokic. Those are my starting 5. I added to that Donovan Mitchell, of course, for the Jazz. I added in AD, Devin Booker, who is one voting place above Chris Paul in this week's release, the second week of All-Star voting. So he's in sixth place in voting. Chris Paul's in seventh. I don't have Chris Paul making the team. He probably does with the fan voting, but hey, this is my list. Let's see. Did I mention AD? Probably. Paul George, John Morant, we're in agreement. I have to say Luka since I didn't have him on the starters. And then my last person slipping in, if we get 12, is De'Aaron Fox. I actually had him basically taking Chris Paul's place in a very close one. And that's simply because the Kings are competitive. Well, his numbers are better than Chris Paul's for one thing. 23, 6 and 6, I believe. And then the Kings are also in 10th place. So they are set to make the play-in tournament right now if trends continue. And it seems like they will be at least 10th, maybe even be able to climb that list a little bit. So that's kind of my list in the West. There are a lot of ways you could go with that. I mean, I could easily see someone being bumped to get Rudy Gobert in there.
Sure.
I'm with you. I like to get, at least the top 3 seeds. I kind of like to try and push for 2 all-stars from those teams. I mean, we know that didn't always happen, like with the San Antonio Spurs historically. So maybe the Jazz are just looking like that. But, interestingly enough, like the story around the Jazz is that they are hitting a record number of 3-pointers per game this season, which was something I did not expect going in. I mean, we're talking like outpacing the 2016 Warriors and stuff like that. I mean, they're hitting like 17 and a half 3-pointers per game. Those teams back then, like the video game Spurs back in 2014 that came back to beat the Heat the year after they lost, they were hitting like just over 10 3-pointers a game. So if you want to compare like the difference in how those teams are playing, it'd be interesting to see if in the playoffs if that can continue for the Jazz. But for now, they are just fire from outside.
I think that's kind of a bad thing, though. I just because,
volatile.
Yeah, it is, because that was even somewhat of a concern with the Golden State Warriors, and you're dealing with 2 of the greatest shooters I think who ever lived, with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. So now with the Jazz, who are not necessarily known to be in this great 3-point team, I mean, when it comes to the playoffs and when defense is so critical, that's a concern. So we'll have to wait and see there. In terms of the voting, I wanted to mention a couple of things. The second fan returns, and this was February 11th. What's interesting, Matt, in the Eastern Conference, I'm not going to go over all the vote getters. Derrick Rose was voted number 8th on the list.
Yeah.
And I think Klay Thompson's voted 8th as well. He hasn't played this season. I just think it's ridiculous that you can even vote for him. He hasn't played. How can he be eligible if he's injured? That makes no sense.
Case for maybe less weight on the fan vote.
Or for the NBA, not have him eligible to be picked.
Yeah.
Take him off the list. He's not eligible.
That's
hurt.
Even better. I like that even better. Yeah.
That's just bizarre to me. So just reading out the top fan returns, like the top 2 here. Front court, LeBron James, Joker. And then you have the guards, Steph Curry, Luka. East, Kevin Durant, Giannis. And then guards, Bradley Beal and Kyrie Irving, which is fairly interesting because you look at Bradley Beal, I don't get the sense he's like a super popular player. And yet he's number 1 in fan voting, which tells you, I think, that the fans are taking notice of his play, even though the Wizards are trash. So I think that's fairly fascinating that, Charles Barkley always talks about guys, the fans don't know anything about basketball. And Bradley Beal's having a great season. He's being rewarded by the fans. So I think that's a positive thing to see there.
Hey, thanks for checking out Hoopsology. If you had any thoughts on the topic we just discussed, we'd love to hear them in the comments section below. If you liked the video, please consider liking and sharing the video. It really helps us out. We appreciate it, and we will see you guys for the next video.